I'm Alan. I'm 73 years old, and I need to tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. Not because it's dramatic, not because I'm trying to sound wise, because I waited too long to understand it. And now I don't have the luxury of pretending I'll get to it later. Most of what you've been told about getting older is soft, polite. It's packaged to keep you moving, keep you working, keep you calm. And the people who should have told you the truth, your parents, your teachers, the whole machine around you, either didn't know it or they didn't want to say it out loud. I spent the first half of my life doing everything that looked correct from the outside. I had the career, the house, the meetings, the respect. I knew how to shake hands, how to smile at the right time, how to sound confident when I wasn't. And I told myself the same sentence over and over, like a prayer that required no faith. I have time. Then at 52, my heart tried to stop the whole performance. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't distract myself. I couldn't earn my way out of it. I couldn't talk my way around it. If you're doing what I did, if you're trading the only life you have for a version of success you can't even feel, please listen. From the outside, my life looked clean. Suit pressed, tie straight, coffee in a paper cup that was always too hot for the first sip. I left the house before the sun was up, when the street lights were still on and the neighbors' sprinklers were ticking on the lawn like little clocks. I was the kind of man people described with words like reliable, disciplined, responsible. At work, they trusted me with the numbers, the difficult clients, the meetings nobody wanted. I was always available, always on. I told myself that was love, that showing up for work like that meant I was showing up for my family too. There were bills, a mortgage, college someday, a car that kept making a new sound every winter, and I grew up with this quiet fear that if I slowed down, everything would fall apart. So I didn't slow down. I liked the way people looked at me when I walked into a room, and they knew I mattered there. I liked being the one who had answers. I didn't call it ego. I called it duty. At home, we bought the things you're supposed to buy. A bigger house when the first one felt too small. A dining table that could seat 8, even though most nights we only used 2 chairs. I'd come in late, and the house would be dark except for the light over the sink, the smell of dish soap, the hum of the refrigerator. Sometimes my wife would be sitting at the table with a stack of mail, just turning envelopes over without opening them, waiting for me to sit down. I'd kiss the top of her head like it was a task I could complete in 2 seconds. "How was your day?" I'd ask, already loosening my tie, already half in tomorrow. And she'd look at me for a beat too long before she answered. That look was the first cost. Not a fight, not a breakdown, just a small quiet distance you could almost pretend wasn't there. I remember standing in my office one evening, alone, watching my reflection in the dark window, city lights behind me, my name on a door, a desk covered in papers, and I felt proud, tired but proud. I truly believed I was building something important. I didn't understand I was also building a life where the people closest to me learned how to live without me in the room. Then the day it broke wasn't dramatic at first. It didn't come with a warning speech from my body. It came in the middle of a normal Tuesday, the kind of day I'd lived 1,000 times. A conference room, fluorescent lights, someone clicking a pen like a metronome. There was a spreadsheet on the screen, and I was talking about quarterly projections like they were weather. I remember the dry taste of coffee in my mouth, and the way my collar suddenly felt too tight, like it had shrunk. I thought it was stress. Indigestion, a bad night of sleep. That's what you tell yourself when your whole identity is built on, "I'm fine." The room started tilting, slow at first, like a boat easing off a dock. The voices got distant, muffled, as if someone had shut a door between me and everyone else. I tried to keep talking. I actually tried to finish the sentence. That's the part that scares me when I look back. How hard I fought to stay normal. One of the guys across the table asked me a question, and my mouth opened, but the answer didn't arrive. It was like my brain had stepped away for a moment. Then my hands went strange, numb and heavy, and the pen on the table looked too far away to reach. Someone stood up. A chair scraped. I heard my name, sharp and louder than the rest. And then there's a blank space. Not peaceful, not cinematic, just missing. The next thing I remember is waking up under harsh white light, confused about what day it was, with tubes in my arm and a tight band around my chest. My wife was in the corner of the room, not sitting straight, not composed. She was folded in on herself like something had finally gone out of her. The doctor said I was lucky, and all I could think was, if that's luck, what was I doing with the years I'd been given? When they stabilized me, the room got quiet in a way I wasn't used to. No phones, no calendar alerts, no one asking me for a decision. Just the steady beep of a monitor and the soft squeak of shoes in the hallway. I stared at the ceiling tiles like they were the only thing I had to do, and that's when the thought finally landed. Not, I could have died. I already knew that. It was, what would have been left if I had? I tried to picture it like an inventory. The house, the retirement accounts, the plaque on my office wall, the nice words at the funeral, the polite stories people tell when they don't know what else to say. He worked hard. He provided. He was respected. And then what? In 5 years, my co-workers would have replaced me and moved on. In 10, the company would have a different logo, different faces, a different problem to obsess over. My name would become a file in a cabinet, a photo in a frame that slowly collects dust. That's when I realized how much of my life had been spent trying to earn a kind of permanence that doesn't exist. I kept telling myself I was building a legacy, but a legacy isn't a title. It isn't a promotion. It's not something you can point to on a balance sheet. It's the parts of you that live inside other people. And when I asked myself, honestly, what parts of me actually lived inside my family, the answer didn't feel good. I thought of my kids' faces at certain ages, and I couldn't attach memories to some of them. Not because I didn't love them, because I wasn't there enough to collect the moments. I was always arriving late, always leaving early, always distracted even when I was in the room. I remembered a night years earlier, coming home after one of those dinners that ran long. The house was quiet. In the hallway, one of my kids had left a school drawing taped to the wall, crooked, with a piece of peeling tape at the top. Bright colors, a stick figure family, a sun in the corner. And I saw it and thought, I'll look at that tomorrow, when I'm not tired, tomorrow, when I have a second. I walked past it. In the hospital bed, that memory came back like a small accusation, not loud, not dramatic. Just a simple picture of how often I postponed the things that were actually my life. I wasn't afraid of dying in that moment. I was afraid that I had already done it, slowly, without noticing. The first night they kept me there, I didn't really sleep. Hospitals don't let you forget where you are. The air is too cold. The sheets feel like paper. Somewhere down the hall, a cartwheel squeaks every time it turns, like a bad door in an old house. My mouth was dry. My tongue felt thick. Every time I drifted off, a nurse would come in and adjust something. or a machine would chirp, and I'd open my eyes again and see the same ceiling, the same fluorescent glow that makes everything look a little dead. My wife sat in that chair by the window for hours, not talking, just there. Her hands were folded in her lap, and every now and then she'd rub her thumb over her wedding ring like she was checking that it was still real. I watched her do that, and I thought, I did this to her, not the heart attack, not directly. But the years of carrying me while I chased the next thing, the years of not now, and after this quarter, and once things settled down. I could hear my own voice saying it, even then, like a tape I couldn't shut off. I have time. I'll do it later. I'm doing this for them. That last one was the easiest lie. It made me feel noble while I missed dinners and birthdays and small, ordinary evenings that don't look important until you run out of them. Around 2 a.m, the hallway went quiet for a while. No carts, no footsteps, just the soft, steady breathing of the building. And that's when the memory came. Not the big milestones, not graduations or weddings, a stupid little moment. My daughter was maybe 8 or 9, I can't even say for sure. It was one of those winter evenings when it gets dark too early. The kitchen smelled like onions and dishwater. The radio was on low. Some old song I didn't listen to. I came in wearing my coat, still talking into my phone, still half in some argument about numbers that don't exist anymore. She was at the table with a workbook open, pencil in her hand. She looked up when I walked in, not excited, not angry, just hopeful, in that quiet way kids are when they've already been disappointed before, but they try again anyway. She said, "Dad, can you help me with this?" And I remember I didn't even look at the page. I kept my hand over the phone and said, "Not right now, sweetheart. I've got something urgent." Her eyes stayed on me for a second longer than they should have. Then she nodded like an adult. She understood, and she went back to the workbook without another word. In the hospital, that moment replayed with a clarity that made me sick. The sound of my shoes on the tile, the way her pencil tip paused in midair, the way she swallowed whatever she was about to say next. I wanted to reach back through time and grab my own wrist and stop myself from walking past that table, but time doesn't work like that. You don't get a warning bell. You don't get a tally on the wall that tells you this was the last time she asked. That night, lying there with my heart stitched together by other people's hands, I understood something I hadn't been willing to understand before. The moments that ruin you aren't always explosions. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they're a little girl at a kitchen table and a man who thinks he'll have another chance tomorrow, and tomorrow never arrives the way you think it will. After that, it got easier to see the pattern, not because I became wise overnight, because once you've stared at a ceiling wondering if you'll see morning, you start noticing what you used to call normal. The doctor gave me the usual talk: diet, stress, exercise, follow-up appointments. Numbers again, just different ones. People sent texts. "So glad you're okay. Take it easy. You're a fighter." I nodded and said thank you, like I was supposed to. But inside, something had cracked. Not in a dramatic way, more like a hairline fracture you can feel every time you move. A week after I came home, I went back to the office for the first time. Just to check in, I told myself. I wore the same suit, same watch, same polished shoes that made a confident sound on the hallway floor. People stood up when I walked in, smiled too big, spoke softer than usual, like I might break. Someone patted my shoulder and said, "Good to have you back." And I felt nothing, not pride, not hunger. Not that familiar rush. I sat at my desk and opened my inbox, and there were 100 messages waiting like I'd never left. I remember staring at the subject lines and thinking if I had died, this would still be here. The world would still be arguing about the same petty things, and my daughter's workbook would still be closed on that kitchen table, waiting for a father who wasn't coming. That's when the lie showed its face again. The lie that told me my life was happening later, that the real living would start after the next milestone, the next promotion, the next year. I had built my days like a hallway that never ended, always another door, always another task, and suddenly I could see the end of the hallway. Not clearly, not with a date, just enough to know it was there. So I started making changes, small ones first, because I didn't know how to do anything gently without turning it into a project. I said no to a meeting, then another. I left the office while it was still light outside, and the sky looked unfamiliar at that hour, like I'd been ignoring it for decades. At home, I tried to sit at the table without reaching for my phone, and it was awkward. My kids talked to me like I was visiting, like they were being polite to a guest. I laughed at the wrong moments, asked questions that sounded like interviews. My wife watched me the way you watch someone who says they're going to change. Careful, waiting for the old version to return. One night, I heard my daughter moving around in the kitchen, cabinet doors, a spoon in a mug, the faucet running. I walked in and she looked up, surprised, like she hadn't expected to see me there. I opened my mouth to say something meaningful, something that would fix the distance, and all that came out was, "Need help with anything?" She shook her head. "I'm fine." And the way she said it sounded like me. That's what hit me. I'd taught her how to be without me, not with a speech, with 1,000 small disappearances. People think regret is loud. They imagine sobbing at a funeral, screaming into a steering wheel, collapsing in some grand moment where the truth finally hits. Mine didn't arrive like that. Mine came in ordinary rooms, at ordinary times, and it stayed. It stayed when I sat at a restaurant with my family and realized my daughter was telling a story to her mother, not to me. It stayed when I heard her laugh from another room and didn't know what caused it. It stayed when she stopped asking me for help, then stopped asking me for anything at all. At first I tried to buy my way back in. That's what I knew how to do. A nicer vacation, a better gift, a surprise dinner. And for a moment it looked like it worked. She'd smile. She'd say thank you. She'd take the picture with me. But there was a thinness to it, like a photo that's been printed too many times. The closeness wasn't there, not the kind you build by being present, the kind you build by hearing the small things before they turn into big things. One evening I drove her to something. I don't even remember what it was. Practice, a friend's house, a school event. The car smelled like old leather and that faint, sweet scent from the air freshener I'd hung up months ago. We sat at a red light, and I looked over at her. She was staring out the window, face lit by passing headlights, calm and distant, and I realized she didn't feel lonely sitting next to me. She felt used to it, used to the quiet, used to me being there physically while my mind was somewhere else. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry," but I didn't, not then, because I was afraid of making it real, afraid that if I named what I'd done, I'd have to live with the full weight of it. So I kept trying to fix it without saying the thing that mattered. I kept showing up in ways that didn't cost me anything, not really. And years went by like that. Not all bad, just missing. Now I'm 73, and I can tell you the truth, I wish someone had forced into my hands when I was younger. You can't keep postponing love. You can't keep treating the people you care about like they'll be waiting in the same place, with the same open heart, whenever you finally decide you're ready. Because one day, without a fight, without a warning, they stop reaching. And when they do, you can still be standing right there and feel like a stranger in your own life. You think the mistake is the job. I thought that too. I thought if I just changed the schedule, stepped back, learned how to say no, it would all soften. You can undo years with a few better weeks, but the truth is uglier than that. The problem wasn't the office. It was what I used the office for. I used it as a hiding place. When I was young, I told myself I was chasing stability. Then I told myself I was chasing respect. Then, without noticing, I was chasing relief. That feeling you get when you're busy enough that nobody can ask you for the parts of you that are awkward to give. The patient parts, the listening parts, the parts that sit at a kitchen table and stay there even when the conversation gets quiet. You think you're building a future, but you're also training everyone around you to stop needing you. And here's the quiet part that doesn't make it into speeches. When you finally turn around and try to come home, they don't slam the door. They just aren't standing there anymore. They have their own rhythm now, their own life that learned to move without your weight in it. I used to imagine some moment where my daughter and I would sit down and everything would come out right. The perfect apology, the perfect talk, the kind of scene people love because it feels clean. But real life isn't clean. Real life is a hallway where you pass each other with a cup of coffee and a few sentences. Real life is a text message that says, "I'm busy." And you stare at it longer than you should because you can hear your own old voice in it. You think, "I'll try again next week." I thought that. I thought time was something you could spend and then earn back. And I'm telling you from this side of it, that's not how it works. It doesn't feel like you're losing them all at once. It feels like you're losing them by inches. A question not asked. A chair left empty. A car ride that stays quiet. And you don't notice what it cost until one day you look at them and you realize you missed the version of them that wanted you. You think you have time. I thought I had time, and I was wrong. By the time you notice it, it's already a kind of ending. Not the dramatic kind, no screaming, no slammed doors. Just a slow rearranging of the world where you're no longer in the center of anyone's day. I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like your daughter calling her mother first, even when it's your phone in her contacts. It looks like family photos where you're standing at the edge, smiling too hard, like you're trying to prove you belong there. It looks like getting an invitation with a time and an address and realizing you weren't part of the planning. You're just a guest. And you start doing this thing I did. You start collecting proof. You remind yourself, I paid for school. I kept the lights on. I was there when it mattered. But the proof doesn't warm the room. The proof doesn't make someone reach for you. One afternoon, I came home early and heard my wife on the phone in the kitchen. She didn't know I was in the hallway. Her voice was low, tired, like she was trying not to wake somebody. And she said, "He's trying. He really is. But I don't know what to do with all these years." She didn't say it angry. That was the worst part. She said it like a woman describing weather she can't change. I stood there with my hand on the door frame, and I felt something in me go cold, because I realized there was a version of me they had lived with for so long that the new version felt like a stranger trying to be let in. Even when people forgive you, they don't always come back. Forgiveness can be real, and the distance can still stay. That's what nobody tells you. They tell you if you apologize, if you show effort, if you do better, things will return to normal. But sometimes normal is gone. Sometimes your choices don't explode your life. They just quietly remove you from it. I tried to make peace with that by keeping busy again. Not as much as before, but enough. I'd tidy the garage. I'd fix things that didn't need fixing. I'd organize papers like order could stand in for closeness. And at night, when the house was asleep, I'd sit in the dark living room and listen to the refrigerator cycle on and off. And I'd think about that kitchen table from years ago, her pencil in her hand, her small voice asking for help. Me saying not right now, because the truth is, I wasn't just teaching her to be independent. I was teaching her I was unreliable in the one way that mattered. Not money, not rides, not logistics, presence. And once someone learns they can't count on you for that, they stop counting on you at all. I'm not telling you this because I want to sound deep. I'm telling you because I can feel the clock in my bones now. People love the lie that life is long, that you get a second act, that you can clean it up later when you're calmer, older, done proving yourself. That lie keeps a lot of men like me comfortable. It kept me comfortable while I missed my own life. If you're younger and you're watching this late at night, you probably think your situation is different. You think your pressure is real, your bills are real, your responsibilities are heavier than mine were. I thought that too. I thought I was the exception. I thought love could wait in a corner while I handled the important stuff. But love doesn't wait forever. It doesn't stay in the same shape. It changes when you don't touch it. It hardens. It gets cautious. It learns to live without you. And one day you wake up and realize the people you were doing it for stopped expecting you a long time ago. That's the irreversible part. Not death. Not even the heart attack. It's the moment someone stops reaching for you. Because once that happens, you can't bargain your way back to the version of them that still wanted you. You can send the money. You can show up to the events. You can sit at the table and ask the right questions. And they can still look at you with a polite face and a closed door behind their eyes. I live with that. I live with the knowledge that my daughter became who she is without my presence being part of the foundation. Not because she didn't deserve it, because I kept postponing it. So when you tell yourself, I have time, hear me clearly. That sentence is how people like me end up old, sitting in a quiet house with a phone that doesn't ring the way we thought it would. You don't get warned when you're about to use up the last chance. You don't get a calendar invite that says, last bedtime story, last car ride where they still talk, last time they ask you for help. You just keep saying, not right now. And then one day, it's not offered anymore. And you can't fix that with effort. You can only carry it. So if you're building a life that requires you to be absent from the people you claim to love, don't call it sacrifice. Call it what it is. It's a trade. And the price is higher than you think. Because time doesn't refund you. It just runs out.